Orianna, the Lady of Clockwork. Nestled among the eclectic storefronts of Piltover sat the workshop of the renowned artificer Corin Revec. Famous for his masterful craft and artificial limbs, Corin's intricate brass designs made the prosthetics both breathtakingly beautiful and often superior to the originals. His daughter Orianna served as his apprentice. Friendly and inquisitive, she was a natural fit to run the shop and blossomed into a capable artisan in her own right. Orianna had an adventurous spirit, but her father, fearing for her safety, never allowed her to venture beyond their neighborhood. Instead, he took her to the theater, where dances, through leaps and pirouettes, told stories of distant lands. Orianna dreamed of visiting these strange and marvelous places and would scurry home to build clockwork dances of her own. News of disaster in the undercity of Zorn made its way to their shop. An explosion had ruptured a chemical line, venting clouds of poisonous gas. Orianna insisted they help the victims, but Corin forbade it. Zorn was far too dangerous. So, with as many supplies as she could carry, Orianna snuck away in the night and rode the hydraulic descender into the depths. Debris filled the streets, and Zornites walked through the toxic haze, faces covered with little more than oily rags. Night after night, Orianna repaired respirators and installed ESO filters. She even gave her own mask to a child who could scarcely breathe. Her father was furious, but soon after her return, Orianna fell gravely ill. Her lungs were ravaged past all hope of recovery. Refusing to accept this, Corin threw himself into his most ambitious project yet. A fully functional set of artificial lungs. After weeks of sleepless nights, he completed his desperate task and carried out the surgery himself. To keep her from ever venturing too far again, the lungs were wound with a special key Corin kept in his safe. Orianna returned to work, and yet the poison continued to spread through her body. Father and daughter worked feverishly to develop new implants and prosthetics, replacing each of her organs as they failed. Piece by piece, Orianna's body was transformed from mortal to mechanical, until only a healthy heart remained. This long and expensive process cost Corin his fortune, forcing him to relocate their business to Zorn. But he saved his daughter's life, and for a time, they were happy. Gradually, Orianna began to feel disconnected from who she had been before. Old memories felt like stories. Even her creativity began to fade, and her beloved clockwork dances became more like masterfully tuned mechanisms rather than works of art. But even as time seemed to stand still for Orianna, it marched onward for her father. Long, lean years brought Corin agonizing chest spasms that meant he could no longer work, and Orianna was forced to provide for him. She'd become profoundly adept at crafting her figurines, even if she took only distant pleasure in recalling what had once inspired their creation. The miniature dancers brought in good coin and barter, but never enough to afford the one thing she believed could save her father. For that, she turned to a local chem baron. Orianna never asked how the man came by a hextech crystal. She simply paid what he had asked. Even so, before she could use it, the chem baron returned demanding a second payment, then a third. When the money ran out, Orianna knew his next visit would end in violence. She looked to the crystal device, still incomplete, too unrefined and powerful for a human body. She saw the logical solution. She didn't need her human heart anymore, and Corin needed a heart no one could ever take from him. She spent weeks in preparation, building a clockwork orb, integrating it into her own mechanisms, readying it to house the crystal so she could defend herself in the journey ahead. Slipping her father a sleeping draught, she commenced the surgery. Corin became one with the last remnant of the daughter he had known and loved. She listened to his steady heartbeat through the night, the quiet hum of Hextech and the beautiful, intricate ball by her side. Only then did she realize she had shed the last of her humanity. But she felt no fear or remorse, merely acceptance. She had become something entirely new, a lady of clockwork, and she needed to find where in the world's vast machine she might fit. At dawn, she collected the key that wound her lungs, a single pulse from her ball welding it firmly to her back. Then she left for good. Corin woke to find his workshop filled with hundreds of figurines, but among them was one he vowed never to sell. Pirouetting to an endless ballet, a golden dancer that needed no key. Fierum. Orianna walked through the fairground, empty and still in the evening gloom. Sir Feasterly's fantastical fair opened its gate to delighted crowds of Zornites but twice a year, and Orianna did not want to miss her chance to see its wonders. She had waited until everyone had left for the day, and the rowdy laughter and accordion tunes had fallen silent. Only the low hum of nearby pipelines pumping steam through the Chem district disturbed the quiet. Detritus lay strewn along the ground, colourful streamers and bright balloons mingling with crumpled wax paper that once held sweet jam pastries. Orianna's clockwork ball hovered beside her as she passed a stall overflowing with roses, which, according to a sign, smelled like each day of the week. She walked by a wind-up monkey holding a pair of cymbals, a cart laden with sugared apples. None of these Zorn-born delights piqued her interest. Orianna had eyes only for the glass cabinet tucked into a secluded corner at the far edge of the grounds. A glimmering wink of metal flashed in the moonlight. It came from the mechanical boy sitting behind the glass. Orianna had seen nothing like him and drew closer, intrigued. He was clad in a midnight blue suit and a silk hat. His skin was a shell of pure porcelain that masked the delicate clockwork gears below, and his eyes shone with glints of silver thread. As Orianna approached him, his lips rearranged into a smile.
"Can you keep a secret?"
the boy said. His voice reminded Orianna of softly chiming bells. "Hello," she said.
"Of course. Let's say we make a trade. My secret for your name. That seems fair. I am called Orianna." "Orianna,"
he repeated.
"Such soft sounds."
Orianna could have sworn his porcelain cheeks blushed.
"I suppose it's my turn. My name is Fierum. My secret is that I fear the outside world, though I long to see distant shores and far-off mountains." "Is that why you live in a cabinet?" she asked. "Because you are afraid." "From here the world visits me,"
said Fierum.
"Behind the glass I am safe. I am very fragile, you see."
He pointed to a hairline fracture on his forearm.
"There it is. I am getting old."
Fierum's mouth opened into a lopsided grin. Orianna giggled and shrugged her shoulders, a gesture she had recently acquired, though she wasn't quite sure if she had used it correctly.
"Oh, you haven't seen my tricks yet.
said Fierim. He reached into his sleeve and produced a bouquet of daisies with a flourish.
Ta-da!
He exclaimed.
And?
Fierim removed his hat and dipped his head in a nod. Half a dozen mechanical pigeons fluttered from beneath the brim. He brought his hands together in a clap, and the entire cabinet filled with an opaque red smoke. By the time it dissipated a few seconds later, the pigeons were gone. Orianna applauded in delight. The ball whirred impressed.
Wonderful,
she exclaimed.
Like magic. And that wasn't even my best execution. Fumbled my sleeve a bit,
he admitted, folding his hands.
But small miracles are my speciality. Like you finding your way to me in this great city. You above all others. You winked at me,
said Orianna.
Why? We are kindred spirits, you and I. But you already knew that,
said Fierim.
It's why you're here, isn't it?
He shuffled his feet. Orianna marvelled at the subtlety of his movements.
It is just that I have never seen another like you,
she said.
I am one of a kind, aren't I? Same as you,
said Fierim. He gestured toward her mechanical frame and winked again. Orianna smiled. Fierim leaned against the glass.
Your smile is fabricated?
She said.
Yes, I'm still mastering certain expressions. Beautiful,
said Fierim.
Well, now you're going to make me blush.
Orianna's ball, hovering at her left shoulder, nudged her gently.
Not now,
she told the ball. She lifted the mechanical monkey from its stall nearby and turned its key. It scuttled about the floor, eyes lit with a red glow, clashing its cymbals together at every third step before slowing to a halt.
You are not like him, are you, Fierim? All wound up at the turn of a key?
She asked.
You have a mind. You have thoughts. I may be compromised by cogs and wheels, but I have dreams like anyone. I know you dream of leaving this place. Surely you are lonely behind this glass. Come with me. We could leave now together,
Orianna said.
Leave?
Fierim's expression fell.
I'm afraid I don't know what you mean. You have no doubt listened to the restless bustle of Zorn, or heard of the grand marvels in Piltover,
Orianna asked. Fierim cocked his head.
I like to ride the rising howl at dusk, to catch the last of the day's golden rays,
Orianna said.
From the very top you can see the harbour beyond sea gates, the endless glistening ocean. From up there you can imagine the smell of faraway lands.
Orianna's bell whirred as it spun in the air, nudged her again.
I suppose now is as good a time as any, she said. Fierim, would you like to see the world? We could leave together right now. I can protect you. I can't think of anything more wonderful,
he said. Orianna circled the glass cabinet in search of an opening. An iron padlock secured a small door at its base. She raised a fist and brought it down upon the lock, smashing it open. A watchman approached them. Hey, stop that! With a glance from Orianna, the ball shot towards the watchman. It clanged upon impact with his helmet, then hovered in the air as if waiting for a command. Orianna nodded, and the ball radiated with waves of coruscating power. Caught in the energy flux, the watchman raised his baton and bashed it into the ball, which spun in mid-air before returning to its target. A second watchman ran towards Orianna. She tried to pull Fierim through the door, but his chair jammed in the opening.
Fierim, can you repeat your trick?
The ball reverberated with energy as it whirled around the first watchman. His metal helmet fizzed with sparks.
My tricks?
Fierim reached into his sleeves and pulled out the bouquet as Orianna spun away from the watchman.
No, the other one.
Fierim replaced his bouquet.
The very last trick,
she said.
Quickly!
The mechanical boy drew the bouquet from his sleeve once more. Orianna spun toward the watchman, her metal dress fanning out in a flurry of sharp blades until the man backed away, baton raised. "Get away from him, you," said the watchman. "That's our property you're tampering with."
"From here, the world visits me,"
Fierum said. He tipped his hat and pigeons poured out. The watchman aimed his baton at Orianna's head, and she ducked just as Fierum clapped. The baton shattered at the side of the glass cabinet, and crimson smoke poured from the opening, obscuring all movement. The first watchman had responded to the ball's galvanic attacks with rageful abandon, throwing all his weight into every punch. The ball was relentless, however, and shot a final blast of energy towards his helmet, and the watchman fell down unconscious. Whirring in satisfaction, the ball flew to Orianna. It unleashed voltaic waves towards the second watchman, rendering him motionless. Orianna stepped into the smoke-filled cabinet. She lifted the mechanical boy from his chair, but his legs would not flex to stand.
Fierum, we must leave." "Leave? I'm afraid I don't know what you mean."
A pair of metallic pigeons flew through the broken glass, but dropped to the ground a few feet from the door.
"Fierum, stand so we can go,"
Orianna said, her face falling.
"Please." "Oh, you haven't seen my tricks yet."
He pulled the bouquet from his sleeve. Orianna ignored Fierum's attempt to tip his hat and dragged him, still fixed in a seated posture, from the glass enclosure. Outside, her ball had cornered the second watchman, who had collapsed in a buzzing heap.
"And that wasn't even my best execution. Fumbled my sleeve a bit,"
said Fierum.
"You are not. Your voice is repeating,"
Orianna said. His head lolled back awkwardly and she held it upright.
"My secret is that I fear the outside world,"
he said. Orianna noticed the embroidery lining his jacket. Sir Feasterly's fantastical fare. Friendly Fierum. He was nothing more than a spectacle for the crowds.
"I was certain you had a mind, had thoughts like me,"
she said. Fierum looked up at her with eyes that glinted with silver.
"I'm one of a kind, aren't I?"
He shuffled his feet nervously, though they were mid-air.
"Same as you."
The ball returned to Orianna and whirred gently.
"We should go."
She set Fierum back on his chair, which she placed outside the shattered glass cabinet.
"I wish you well." "Small miracles are my speciality,"
he said.
"Like you finding your way to me."
"Goodbye, Fierum," said Orianna softly. The two watchmen lay unconscious on the ground. The ball hovered at her side as she walked away. She did not look back until she was clear of the park's towering gates. As she turned, she thought she saw a glint of metal winking in the distance.